Hello everyone and welcome to Action RPG Build Guide Edition. Today I'm ready to drop on you my newly refreshed and finished Bleed Barbarian for Diablo 4. We beat Pit 61, we beat Infernal Horde Tier 5, we clear Nightmare Dungeon 100, and that is after 3 days of playing. As always, I will cover every single facet of the build. Everything is timestamped in the description below if you need to bounce around. Let's not waste any time and jump right into this. All right, starting off with some gameplay. Now, the skills I'm using for this Bleed Barb are Leap, Charge, Double Shout, Rupture, and Rend. Now, we do not use a generator. That is because we get Fury from our Charge, we get Fury from our Leap, we get Fury when we get hit, and so far we can maintain Fury through that. It's not too bad, and you can switch in play if you are struggling and you don't have the proper gear. Now, Charge is going to apply 2 stacks of Rend. Leap is going to apply 2 stacks of Rend because we are using the newly updated Ring of the Ravenous. And what that is going to do is when a brawling skill does damage, this is why we are spec'd into Leap and Charge, it is going to apply Rend for us. That is why this build is so quick. What you are seeing right here is this is a Nightmare Dungeon 100, which means the enemies that we are fighting in this dungeon are 154s. These are the hardest dungeons in the game. In 3 days time for Season 5, we have beat Pit 61, Infernal Horde Tier 5 Solo, Uber Duriel, Nightmare Dungeon 100s. So obviously you can always still push this. We really haven't started masterworking yet. Your gear can always get better with greater affixes and Ubers, but in its current state, after 3 days, I mean, you can handle most content. Obviously, once you start pushing Pit, you need to make sure that you are fully geared out. But I just really wanted to showcase these enemies are 154. So let me show you the actual Nightmare Dungeon boss fight. Where is he? Oh, it's right there. And I can show you how this does against single target. Obviously, no deaths. And remember that when you are playing this, you really have to maintain your Fury since you do not use a generator. Usually you want to use all your Rend, then Charge, use all your Rend, then Leap. All right, Scourge of the Land, 154. Rupture is going to boost our attack speed and rip all that bleed out of the target. Charge will apply Rend, Rupture again, Rend, Leap. Get our Fury up. Get our Fury up. Rupture. Charge. War Cry. Shouts. Nightmare Dungeon 100 cleared. Let me show you how to recreate this build. Starting off with the skill tree in the basic category, we don't use them. So 2 points anywhere, it doesn't matter. Moving down to core skills, we are buffing Rend, and we're taking Violent Rend, which is going to give us a 30% multiplicative to vulnerable enemies. So make sure enemies are vulnerable. And like I said during the gameplay portion, your Charge and your Leap will be applying the Rend. So you can manually cast Rend, and your brawling skills will be doing it as well because of the Ring of the Ravenous, and Blizzard updated the ring, so now it has a cooldown of only 1 second instead of 4, which is absolutely awesome. When you come down here, we are 3 into Imposing Presence, 3 into Vigor, which is going to give you damage reduction against elites and maximum life. We are taking Challenging Shout, which is going to give us maximum life, going to give us Fury when you take damage, and damage reduction. Coming down to our brawling skills, this is our favorite category. We're taking War Cry, which is going to boost your damage and give you Fortify. We're taking Booming Voice and Guttery Yell, which is going to be shouts cause enemies to deal less damage, and shouts will increase their effect. We are maxing Charge, and we're taking Power Charge. We're putting 1 point into Leap, and we're taking Power Leap. Aggressive Resistance 3 and Battle Fervor 3. So every time you damage an enemy with Charge or Leap, you will trigger Berserking, which means you're going to be Berserking all the time because you're using these every second. Moving down, we are using Rupture, And on here, we're using Warrior's Rupture. So you use Warrior's Rupture, which rips or reaps all the bleed out of the enemy. And then you attack with Rend with a 40% boost to attack speed. We're using 1 to hamstring, 3 to cut to the bone, which is going to buff your bleeding effects. 1 into thick skin, 3 into counter offensive, which is going to give you boost to damage based upon your fortify. And your last point down here into gushing wounds because we are a bleed barb. Now, something we got to talk about, because this will definitely come up. If you cannot maintain Fury, all right? Initially, I was using this build with Flay, but then I got it to the point where I could maintain my Fury through gearing. So, when you're using the Will Pants, every single time you hit with charge, you generate Fury. Every single time you leap, you generate Fury. When you come up here, if that is not enough, you can pull this point out and put it right here. Every single time you attack with Rend, you generate Fury. Now, yes, you are losing damage, but those are 3 ways you can use to get your Fury back. Now, on top of that, if you are lucky enough to get a uber unique, a mythical Ring of the Starless Skies, you will almost never have to worry about Fury, and you could generate it through Rend, or you won't need to use this, but your charge and your leap will take care of it. But if it's just driving you crazy, no big deal. You can pull 1 point out right here from Challenging Shout, because you're also gaining Fury when you're hit. Come up here, put it right there. Okay. Now you put Flay on your bar and take Rend off. And then you come right here and move this point, Power Leap, to right here, Mighty Leap. So this would be the skill tree if you are struggling to maintain your Fury with Rend. Rend is off your bar. You now put Flay on. You save this point because it doesn't matter. And you switch Leap over to slow enemies. And you're still off to the races until you can get your final gear. Also, for Flay, Rend, charge, leap, and rupture, you want to set all of your attacks to slashing weapon. Two-handed slashing weapon. Those are the skills. Now let's talk Paragon board, and I'm going to go through each board one by one. Now we are level 100, so we have all of our points. The first glyph we are using is Exploit, because we want to make enemies vulnerable as much as possible. As you saw during the skill portion, enemies need to be vulnerable, and this will help you buff that. On here, we also have Raw Power, which is maximum boost, and Iron Strength. Coming up to our second board, we are using Carnage, and the glyph we are using is Might. And you will see on here, we have Enraged maxed, we have Brash maxed, we have Fierce maxed, we have Cold Conditioned maxed. I'm starting to finally get my resistances and armor maxed. I'm becoming smarter. We've got Berserker maxed. And that is board 2. Moving over to board number 3, we are using Decimator. And the glyph that we are using is Ire. Okay. We've got Demolish maxed. We've got Arrogance maxed. We've got Pillage maxed. And right here, we've got Destroyer. Looking good. And we really like Decimator. So this is going to make it where each time you make an enemy vulnerable, your damage is increased by 10% multiplicator for 5 seconds. Overpowering a vulnerable enemy grants you an additional 10%. And remember that even though this is an overpower build, Rupture is a guaranteed overpower. So it's going to trigger Decimator all the time. Coming down to board number 4. On here, we are using Blood Rage. And this is going to give us a 30% multiplicative damage while berserking. The glyph we are using is Disembowel. And killing a bleeding enemy has a 10% chance to reduce the cooldowns of one non-ultimate. So this is going to make it where you can use your charges, your leap, and your charge more often. And then on here as well, Revel, Grit, and Enraged are both maxed. Board number 5, we are moving over to Hemo. 28% multiplicative damage. And the glyph on here is Undaunted. On here as well, Poison Conditioned, Flair, Butcher, and Grit, all maxed. And coming down to board number 6, our last little one here, we're using Territorial. And on here we have Conditioned, and we've got Raw Powered maxed. That is the Paragon boards. Moving over to Diablo 4 builds, we're going to break down the planner for you, starting with unique items. Now, looking at the unique items right now, we're using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. There's a lot of uniques. Now, the only one that is actually required, okay, the build does not work without it, is Ring of the Ravenous. Rend's duration is increased by 4 to 8 seconds. Damaging enemies with the Brawling skill applies 2 stacks of Rend's bleed. This can only affect each enemy once every 1 second. Now, this used to be you could only affect enemies once every 4 seconds. And with that update, this is now an absolutely monstrous item. Awesome build. You have to have Ring of the Ravenous, and if you want to target farm it, you can get it from Beast in the Ice. Not that hard of an item to acquire. Now we're going to go over the other 6 uniques, starting with the Tusk Helm. Since you're using Leap and Charge, and you're going to be triggering Berserking every time you use that, it's going to become very easy to become Enraged. And when you're Enraged, you do 15% more multiplicative damage. You generate Fury, which helps maintain your Rend and gives you cooldown. We're using the Rage Helmet. Inflicting bleeding on an enemy has up a 60% chance to reduce cooldowns by 1 second, and this is designed for damage over time, so it fits perfectly. We're using the Will Pants. This is going to give you Unstoppable and give you Primary Resource, and basically you're going to get 50 Fury every single time you use Charge. We're using Yen's Blessing. This is really good for resistances, but more importantly, casting a skill has a 60% chance to cast a non-mobility, non-ultimate skill that is currently on cooldown. Basically, every 8 seconds, these boots will use a shout. It's pretty cool. It's like automatically using your shouts. We are using Fields of Crimson. While using this weapon, damaging at least 1 enemy with Rupture creates a blood pool that inflicts multiplicative bleeding damage over 6 seconds. Enemies standing in the blood pool take increased damage. Again, easy to find. And Magnum Opus. Skills using this weapon can deal up to 5% multiplicative damage per point of Fury you have, but you lose 10 Fury every second. Again, you're going to have a lot of Fury because a lot of the times you're not even going to be using Rend because you're going to be killing all the enemies with Rupture, Charge, and Leap, which don't cost any Fury, okay? So those are the unique items. Now, really quickly, I will go around. We're using Berserk Ripping. Dealing direct damage with Berserking inflicts the base damage as an additional bleeding damage over 5 seconds. We are using Aspect of the Charge. Charge calls forth 4 Ancients who also charge, dealing 35% of their normal damage. This just makes it really easy to apply Ring of the Ravenous Rend stacks. Edgemaster. This is going to give you multiplicative damage based upon your primary resource. Bold Chieftain. This is going to reduce the cooldown of your shouts. And Bulkathos. We have to throw Bulkathos on our amulets. It's the only place that it will go. But ultimately, this is going to make it where your leap creates earthquakes, which also does damage over time as physical. But more importantly, it gives you damage reduction. So those are the items. Now, if you really want the build to sing, okay? And again, this is now your pushing. Fields of Crimson. End game, you would want the Grandfather. And Bold Chieftain, you would actually dump this and you would put on Ring of the Starless Sky. So if you can get these 2 mythic items, it will super boost this build. Super boost it. For your gems, you want Amethyst. And honestly, on here, okay, you can use crit damage, so you can use Emeralds. You can use Amethyst for damage over time, or you can use Sapphires for vulnerable damage. Literally all 3 of them work with this build, but damage over time, Amethyst is great. You want to stack as many rubies as possible to give you more damage. And then over here, all you're going to try and get is max out your resistances or skulls if you need to max out your armor. Okay? Like I said, you want to set everything to slashing, and for your technique, you want a 2-handed axe, 10% multiplicative damage to vulnerable enemies. And now looking at gear stats. And we're only going to focus on the non-uniques here. On your gloves, strength, crit chance, ranks to rend. On your amulet, strength %, resource cost reduction, ranks to cut to the bone. On your weapons, you could hear the enemies fighting in the background in Diablo. On weapons, you want strength, critical strike damage, and then on here I put flat damage, but you could also put damage over time. You could also put vulnerable damage. I just put flat because it works for everything, but any one of those three would work as well. And it's the same on your one-handed. Everything else is all uniques, so it is pretty simple. So with that, you now know the gear, you know the affixes, you know the gems, you know the skill tree, you know the Paragon board, you know what weapon to take for your skills, and you know the technique. You should be all set. All right, everyone, that's the build guide. What do you think of my new and improved Bleed Barb? Is there anything I missed? Is there anything I could do to take this to the next level? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Couple of asks. Please like, share, and subscribe if you think I've earned it. And if I haven't earned it, I'm going to work harder for you. Ask number 2, check out my Discord. We do a giveaway every 2 weeks for just being a member of my community. Approaching 4,300 members, non-toxic action RPG enthusiasts. That is linked in the description, and the best way to support is always Patreon. That is the first link. We have movie night and game night coming up. I'm done. Hopefully you're entertained or at least learned something. Aaron, out.